She's now a 3-time Paralympian and a medalist, claiming bronze in the 100-metre breaststroke at the Rio Games in 2016. She's also a European champion and a 4-time Para-World swimming medalist. She is also, I guarantee you, an inspiring speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, Ellen Keane.
I guess I want to start off by talking about 2020 because it's not a year that anyone was expecting. It's not a year that anyone had planned for, prepared for in terms of how it turned out. We all had our dreams for 2020. We all had calendars with birthday parties marked or events we were going to go to or holidays we had booked, and it didn't turn out that way. But the people who really noticed it were the athletes. And as an athlete, I know myself that we're always prepared for the worst case scenario. It's part of our training. When I go away, I always have my racing gear and my training gear in my carry-on, just in case my luggage gets lost on the journey. When I'm at a competition, I always bring a spare pair of goggles, a spare hat, a spare pair of togs and racing suit into the call room with me just before I race, just in case something rips or something bad happens. Even though the reality of my suit ripping and me being able to get a suit on just in time for my race is unrealistic, but that's what it's like to be an athlete. We're always trying to prepare ourselves for the worst case scenario. And COVID wasn't something that we could prepare for. When Rio 2016 finished at the closing ceremony, I remember dreaming of Tokyo 2020. I spent 4 years preparing for it and knowing that without a doubt Tokyo was going to happen and I was going to be there competing and I was going to try and win a medal for Ireland. And that didn't happen, and it was something that none of us could prepare ourselves for. It's something that's never happened in the past. The Games has never been cancelled apart from during the war or postponed. And it was something that we had to really get our head around. And then I found out that the pools were closed and we were going into lockdown. I've been representing Ireland since I was 10 years old, and in those 15 years, I've never been out of the water for longer than 3 weeks. So I was out of the water for 76 days. I had to figure out 76 days worth of training. And thankfully I did. But I was also thrown into the category of a person online trying to find home workout equipment, and I was thrown in amongst all those people. I didn't feel like an elite athlete anymore. I had to replace swimming with cycling a bike. But thankfully, I was able to get enough gym equipment to be able to do my proper gym sessions, albeit they were in a garden. I had my good days and my bad days, but I was surrounded by a group of people online who really helped me get through it. And when they were having their bad days, I'd help them get through it. And they were my teammates and the people I was living with and my friends who I was constantly in contact with. And it was always about, let's get it done, let's do it and move on. Whenever I wasn't training, I spent a lot of lockdown really reflecting on who I am and how far I've come. And to be honest, before lockdown, I didn't know if I loved the sport anymore. I didn't know if I was swimming because I loved it, or was I swimming because it's something I've always done and because other people expected me to. But when the water was taken away from me, I realised how much I really love competing and how much I love representing Ireland. And I realised that everything that I am is because of my sport. My sport has made me a confident person. My sport has given me opportunities to travel the world. And my sport has given me the opportunity to really make a difference. But I wouldn't have sport if it wasn't for the family that I was born into. Disability is one of those things that people think is the worst case scenario. It's one of those things that can happen to anyone at any point in their life, but we're not prepared for it. when I was born, my parents didn't know that I was going to be born without an arm. And they took it in their stride. They decided, we are going to treat her exactly the same as everyone else. When she's good, she's going to be treated like she's been good. When she's bad, we're going to treat her like she's been bad. And it's because of them that I got involved in swimming. They were brave enough not to let what other people were saying about disability, or when other people were looking down on me, they didn't let any of that affect them. And they stood up for me whenever they could. And whenever I was treated differently because of my arm, or maybe given a little bit too much help, they'd always make sure that I was treated exactly the same. But they couldn't protect me from what they didn't know. And what they didn't know was that, yes, when I was swimming, I was the happiest person in the world. I loved it so much and I embraced it so much. But when I wasn't in my bubble of sport and in my bubble of swimming, I had to go out into the world, into society, where they're the people who think that disability is the worst case scenario. They're the people who are afraid of it. And they're the people who aren't willing to look beyond a disability or look beyond the barrier put in place. And because of that, my parents couldn't protect me from the stares that I was getting when I was 10 years old off old people or off kids who were afraid of me. And the staring really, really affected me. And I hid my arm. I'm wearing long sleeves right now, but if this was 10 years ago even, I'd be like this, hiding it. You wouldn't notice. I'd have my arms behind my back. And I would have perfected it so that no one noticed that I had one arm. And that lasted for a very, very long time. The only place that I did feel safe was when I was swimming. And that's the amazing thing about sport. Sport is probably the one thing that really accepts anyone. Sport doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your background is, what your beliefs are, as long as you're willing to give your all in that sport. And that's what I did. So I was so focused on getting better, faster, stronger that I didn't care about anyone around me. And I knew what it felt like to feel alive because of sport. And I knew what it felt like to be happy because of sport. And I was surrounded by people so open-minded about trying new things and seeing what barriers in place and deciding we're going to figure out how to do it a different way. And because of that, I started to get this confidence that I wouldn't have if it wasn't for sport. And it may have taken a few years, but when I started college, I decided, you know what, I'm going to embrace my body. And that's exactly what I did. So while I was reflecting in lockdown about how far I've come, I did realize that I'm in such a privileged position. And privilege is something that a lot of people are throwing around this year, whether it's white privilege or privilege of having money when other people don't. A lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of able-bodied privilege. And although I'm a person with disability, I realize that I have a privilege because I was born into a family that decided not to see my disability and to treat me the same and to make sure I always pushed myself. But there are so many people out there who are born into families or who are surrounded by people who are too afraid of looking beyond and who are too afraid to try and adapt their scenario to help someone grow. And if I wasn't born into this family and if I didn't have the experience that I have had, then I don't know where I would have turned up. I know for a fact that I wouldn't have the physical body I do now because I've seen other people like me with this disability and they're so hunched over. They think that they can't do things. Their life is so much worse off because they were never allowed to feel strong. And as I reflected on the privilege that I've experienced because of my sport and my family, I realized that I have this voice that I can use, and that's what I've been trying so hard to use the past few years, probably since Rio, because ever since I kind of started winning medals, I realized that the media are actually interested in me and I have a chance. And although sport is so accepting of anyone, we still have a long way to go, because in my eyes, we haven't finally got there yet in Ireland until achieving an Olympic gold medal is seen the same as achieving a Paralympic gold medal. And maybe one day at the RT Sports Awards, we're going to see a Paralympic athlete be named Sportsperson of the Year, and I'll be delighted when that happens. But that's what we have to continue to fight for, and we have to continue to notice the barriers that are put in place, because it's really, really easy to not see them. It's really easy to overlook them. It's really easy to say, that doesn't affect me, so why should I care? But people with disabilities need other people to notice, and they need other people to listen. And as much as we talk about this year and how hard this year has been and how we've all had to adapt and overcome and think outside the box, people with disabilities have had to do that their whole life. So we need more people to be brave, we need more people to be open-minded, and we need more people to just not be afraid of any barrier that's put in place. When I actually went back to the pool after the first lockdown, I was interviewed by a journalist, and he asked me, what would happen if you stood up here right now and swam a 100-meter breaststroke as fast as you could? Would you be the same? Would you be faster? He started asking me all these questions. And he also asked me, because I'm 25, he asked me if my age was an issue. Was I afraid that my age was going to make me slow down? And he was putting all these barriers up and making me doubt myself. And I honestly didn't know what to say, because this is something I've never experienced. This is something that I've tried my best to deal with. And I have no competition, so I don't know how to answer that question. And a few weeks ago, I actually had that opportunity. So I put my racing suit on, I got in, and I swam a 100-meter breaststroke as fast as I could. And I swam faster than I've ever swum in my life. So I felt so proud that I could post that on social media and tell that story. But it just made me realize and also confirm what I've always believed, that the biggest barrier, the biggest scary thing that is going on is in your brain. And if you decide that you're not going to recognize that and you're going to adapt and overcome whatever obstacle you see, then anything is possible. So to be honest, throughout my life, I've just kind of realized the importance of being open-minded and not seeing any obstacle. And it's when you see the obstacle that it becomes an issue. But if there's a will, there's a way. And I think this year has proven that there's always going to be a way. So I want to thank Cara again for having me here. I really enjoyed getting out of the house and getting into a dress and not wearing tracksuit bottoms or a swimsuit or any training gear. It made me feel like a proper human again. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.